Wilder, who is the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction. We have Muhammadu Maigari Dingyagi, who is now the Minister of Labour and Employment. Bianca Odinaka Odumegu Ojukwu is now the Minister of State Foreign Affairs. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole is now the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment.
Yes.
Idi Mukhtar Maiha, Ministry of Livestock Development. We have Right Honorable Yusuf Abdullahi Atta is now the Minister of State, Housing and Urban Development, of course awaiting approval. And Suwaiba Sahid Ahmed, PhD, is now the Minister of State, Education. So that's the complete list. So what we're wondering now is, for our expectations, what impact would this have on, first of all, policy making? What impact would this have on governance? What impact would this have on efficiency of these ministries, and also the cost of governance?
Well, Sage, there have been talks, really, in the public space about the possibility of the president reshuffling his cabinet.
Yeah.
And of course, there are some that felt that, look, it was just time for him to rework the machinery of governance, looking at his appointment, his ministers. You know, there's a committee that has been charged, with the job of evaluating the performance of these ministers. And I think the report had been submitted, so the president needed to work on it. Before we talk about expectations, let's look at what has changed and what has not changed, or what we expected to change and that did not change. If you look at these 7 nominations, as against what used to be the practice, for the first time, we are seeing their portfolios attached to it. If you remember, other nominations would always be just names sent to the Senate, and then when those persons are screened, you now start to see portfolios attached to them, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
But now these 7 nominations have now come with the portfolio. So one would expect that at the point of screening, the right questions will now be asked them, since these things have now come with portfolio. And that's what we've always talked about, the need to nominate ministers with the attached portfolio, so that at the point of screening, no matter how poor some of us have thought the screenings are, I think it's even better to see them screened with attached portfolio, and somehow we've seen it in this instance. But again, 5 ministers were relieved of their duties, 7 have been added. So for those that were expecting the government, the president, to cut down his number of ministers, to probably begin to show an inclination towards, many Nigerians are complaining about the 48 ministers. Now we have 50, all balanced. So the president is not even looking in that direction. That's what this means. Again, the Ministry of Livestock Development, now a minister designate upon his confirmation. So that's also sorted. But I'm just trying to say that, look, for those that were hoping that the president will show some example in the area of cutting down the cost of governance, reducing its number of ministers, nothing has happened in that regard. Remember that the president was the one that separated Ministry of Tourism and Culture, appointing different ministers for those 2 ministries. Now he has now matched them again. But again, you have 7 more ministers that have been nominated. The 10 that have been redeployed, again, would have to check and recheck again whether the president considered their earlier appointment as misappointment, and he thinks they will do better now in these areas. Dr. Lausa, for example, we had thought he was going to do a very fantastic job in the health sector. Now he's going to be Minister of Education. But we just have to wait to see what happens with that. For those 5 ministers that have been relieved, I think the list should have been more. More ministers should have been added to the list of those that will be relieved. Because in terms of performance evaluation for us, and that we've done severally, there's no reason why Mr. 𝐴그ᴜ Oyetola is still a minister. If you're going to list one of the worst performing ministers in this government, it should be top on the list. But he's retained his position. There's no reason why Abubakar Kyari, the Minister of Agriculture,
right,
should be retaining his position as minister. He's had a very dismal performance, very poor. There's really nothing to what he has been able to do as Minister of Agriculture. And several other ministers too say, because of time, we can't go on and on. For there are people who also think that Minister Adelabu should have been relieved of his duties. But a little bit of problem with information management. But in terms of his activities and what he's been trying to do, you can't really say it's not done well. At least relatively as against what others have done. The Minister of Women Affairs has now been relieved of her duties. I think, she's been caught in the web of a lot of controversy.
Quite controversial.
She's been quite controversial. I think she's just a very emotional person. Remember when she had this back and forth with the National Assembly Committee, the also issue of this mass marriage that was supposed to take place somewhere in the north, that she also got herself involved with. But at the end of the day, I think I was hoping that maybe about 10 or 15 ministers would have been relieved of their duties. We only saw 5. But there are also questions said about the Ministry of Petroleum. The president is still retaining that position, obviously from what we've seen. And there are people who felt that the president should have been the first person to relieve himself of that duty and appoint petroleum resources and gas resources. I really can't say what they've really been able to do, if you understand. Then the issue of the Niger Delta Ministry.
Yes, that was controversial.
Being scrapped and then turned to Ministry of Development Commission, whatever. I don't know how people in Niger Delta would take that particular decision. Because what it means is that, look, the Ministry of Niger Delta, which used to be a personal reserve for people of the Niger Delta, no more exists. So, because this means now, which is supposed to supervise the development commissions of the 6 geopolitical zones, cannot be the sole reserve now of the Niger Delta people. Because the job now has gone beyond even the Niger Delta. It is now to monitor the activities of all the 6 development commissions that have just been, created.
Yes.
The question again is this: why do we need a ministry to monitor the activities of the development commissions? The development commissions are supposed to work directly with the president, the office of the president. And they are going to have their own board, they are going to have their own structure. For heaven's sake, why do you need a ministry to monitor the activities of the development commission? They are also going to be working with their regional state governments, the subnational. So again, well, this is how the president wants to rework his cabinet. I think we just have to see how this turns out eventually, whether there's going to be anything that will change, especially when it comes to the performance of this administration generally. But again, this is what the president has done. We've reported it, we're looking at it, we're going to see whether there's going to be any meaningful change. But at the end of the day, there are still concerns really about what is going on in the mind of the president and this particular government when it comes to nation building.
All right, then. Well, there you have it. That is all the information we have for you regarding the cabinet reshuffling. The private sector opposition split as the president reshuffles the cabinet. OPS backs the president. CSOs and Nigerians demand the sacking of more underperforming ministers. And the president fires 5, appoints 7, and reassigns 10 ministers as the federal government merges and scraps some ministry. Of course, this action of the president has not been without some critiquing, as Edwin Clark, for one, just like Fuad has highlighted, has been very unhappy with the merging of the Niger Delta Development Commission, which has now become a part of the Regional Development Commission. He believes that, the Niger Delta has a lot of issue that needs special attention. So this merging will sort of take away from the attention that typically used to be given primarily to the Niger Delta. Let's see what happens at the end of the day. Of course, these 7 ministers are still awaiting approval by the Senate. Let's give them some time, see how well they perform, and then we can start talking about a performance review and if they deserve to retain their positions. You can find this particular story across the front pages of all the papers actually, but for the Punch newspaper it is on page 2. Now let's move to other stories. The Punch tells us this morning Dangote refinery begins direct sale to marketers. Dangote Refinery begins direct petrol sale to marketers. And the story here in the Punch, I beg your pardon. The story here tells us. Oh, hold on a second. I'm sorry. Okay, the Dangote Petroleum Refinery has started supplying premium motor spirit, popularly called petrol, to some oil marketers directly without recourse to the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. It was gathered that while more oil marketers were intensifying efforts to buy the product directly from the plant, others were importing the commodity as hundreds of millions of liters of imported PMS hits Nigeria's shores in 2 weeks' time. Now, the development has been confirmed earlier by an exclusive report by The Punch. We have an individual who was not allowed to speak on the issue, disclosing anonymously that marketers are now allowed to buy directly from Dangote Refinery, but then some others are choosing to import the product. The price at which it is being sold is unknown, but then if the price was not favorable to them, they would not have come to buy it at the refinery. This is me quoting the anonymous source. So Fuad, we're now being told by an anonymous source, I don't know the credibility of these source, that marketers are now buying directly from Dangote Refinery without the NNPC as the middleman. Now, the price they are buying is still unknown. As this source says, they do not have the liberty to make that information public, but we still have many more marketers who are choosing to import the product rather than buy it directly from Dangote Refinery. Fuad.
Well, Sage, we actually respect and appreciate what our colleagues in the print media, what they've been doing, what they keep doing. A lot of work, really digging into stories, investigating, and of course setting the agenda with some of their reports. But I'm sorry, when it comes to the issue of the oil sector, anything that comes from any anonymous source, I'm probably not on this particular story. Remember that I think earlier in the week or last week, there was this story of the fact that the issue of marketers buying directly from the Dangote Refinery may not happen as expected because there's a substantive agreement between the Dangote Refinery and the NNPC on them being off-takers, and until the end of that particular agreement, nothing new can happen, to give opportunity for marketers to buy directly from that particular refinery. So if the papers are saying that, look, there are credible sources telling them that has started to happen, I think we'll have to wait for official information from the Dangote Refinery. A lot has happened really in the oil sector in the last 6 months or year that makes some of us a bit skeptical about stories that comes with unnamed sources. So I still want to know. Again, if you look at this particular report, it's saying that, look, the price is still not known. Until now, it is strange, it is a bit questionable and worried that when it comes to PMS from the Dangote Refinery, that refinery has not given us an official information on how much it's selling to either the NNPC or the marketers, if it is true that the marketers are now able to buy directly from it. So we want to urge the Dangote Refinery people to please be more transparent and open about what is happening in that particular sector. We've had so many misinformation, disinformation, and I think it's worrying, really. And I think for the image of that refinery in itself, it's just important they have to come up open again with some of this information. So I'll leave it at that for now, Sage.
All right, page 35 of the Punch newspaper has the full report. This is still trends in the papers on Mainland 98.3 FM. I'm Sage Babalola. Fuad Side joins us virtually as we look through the front pages of our dailies. We're particularly looking at the Punch newspaper, giving you an update on the recent cabinet reshuffle of the president and now developing stories in the oil sector, particularly the arrangement with Dangote Refinery, the NNPCL, and marketers. An unnamed source claims that marketers can now buy the product directly directly from Dangote. But as you've heard, maybe we should wait for official response from the refinery before we take this as a statement of fact. Moving forward, we also have here on the front page of the Punch newspaper, page 42 specifically, 12 states delay 30,000 naira minimum wage for teachers. Now, 12 states of the Federation are yet to implement the 2019 minimum wage of 30,000 for teachers. Data from the National Union of Teachers show that though some states implemented the 2019 minimum wage, it was not fully implemented for teachers at primary school levels. The affected states where the wage was not yet fully implemented for teachers generally are Abia, Adamawa, Benue, Cross River, Gombe, Imo, Kogi, Niger, Sokoto, Taraba, Bauchi, and Zamfara. And as of May 2024, the Nigeria Labour Congress in Zamfara State accused the state government of paying teachers the sum of 8,000 naira monthly. The Abia State government was also accused of failure to implement the minimum wage, not just for teachers, but also for other workers in the state. Forward, as it stands, the 30,000 minimum wage has not been implemented in some states. And now we have the 70,000 minimum wage, and all of the teachers and some workers in all of the named states are still wondering when they will get to enjoy the benefit of that minimum wage. Yes, as at May 4, 2024, this report is telling us that in Zamfara State, some teachers were still earning 8,000 naira.
8,000 naira?
8,000, yeah.
As transport allowance or as salary?
Salaries.
I know some of these are politicians. You know, these are some of the things that you hear that just get you completely worried. You know, Zamfara State and some states too. We have it on good authority that some states are still even paying 18,000 naira minimum wage. And in these states, you have appropriations, you have monies. Some of the governors have also used the states to borrow kinds of loans. And they are working free because, again, we have a very weak system that can hold them to account. You know, our anti-corruption war has become a huge joke. You have a conspiracy of the entire system that is heavily tolerant of corruption and misgovernance. The anti-graft agencies have practically become toothless bulldog. The judiciary has a lot of credibility issues, especially when it comes to prosecution and judgments around, you know, some of these big monsters who keep stealing people's resources. Because there's no excuse for this, really, say. There's really no excuse for this. I saw things actually when I served too in Taraba State. You know, we still have people who are being paid salaries by hand. You know, they just come, they give them cash. And all of those kind of ridiculous things. You know, so it's unfortunate. Unfortunately, too, Sage, the organized labor looks very weak. They look subdued. They look captured. You know, and whether you like it or not, there are also questions about, you know, corruption around even the organized labor. Some of them are complicit. And there are people who say some of these organized labor leaders in the states, particularly, are agents of the government. Some of them are in bed with even the governors and the political leadership of the state. So when things happen like this, they are not even able to see anything. So far, they are able to take care of their own personal interests. It's unfortunate, Sage. And I think the only way out of this is to see what the labor will do about it. It's sad. Very, very sad.
That's on page 42 of the Punch newspaper. We have here on page 43, FEC approves $618 million loan for fighter jet ammunition. That's the headline. Now, the story, the Federal Executive Council has approved a loan of about $618 million from a group of financiers for the procurement of 6 fighter aircraft and ammunition for the Nigeria Air Force. This was disclosed by the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, in Abuja, following the conclusion of the FEC meeting presided over by President Bola Tinubu. Also on Wednesday, the FEC approved 740 billion naira for the Burgess stretch of the Abuja-Kano route, among other high-profile road projects. And Idris, who stood in for the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edo, said from the Honorable Honorable Minister of Finance, who is away on official duty in the United States. I'm going to let you know what those fake approvals are. So they go on ahead and tell us about all of the loans. There's been approval for some contracts, about 7 of them for the Nigeria Customs Service. There's an approval for an agreement for the elimination of double taxation with respect to taxes on income and prevention of tax evasion. There's also approval to obtain a credit facility of about 443 billion euros and another $141 million from a group of financiers for the procurement of 6 units of M-34-6 fighter aircraft and ammunition for the Nigeria Air Force. And lastly, from the Ministry of Finance is the approval for the signing of an agreement for the elimination of double taxation with respect to taxes on income and prevention of tax evasion, and also avoidance between the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Republic of Botswana. And so you have it. So we are going to have to borrow more money to beef up our security architecture, and there will be also an initiative that aims to harmonize our tax regime and also to ensure that tax evasion doesn't happen again, amongst other things. What do you think? I mean, if this loan is used correctly, it's adequate, right?
Of course, yes. When it comes to security of lives and properties of Nigerians, any efforts of government should be a welcome development and should be encouraged. Because again, what are we as a people when we cannot sleep with our 2 eyes closed, when our farmers cannot go to farm, when our people cannot even travel during the daytime, talking of at night, traveling at night? So one of the major challenges that this government has to really, really tackle headlong, if any of their monetary or fiscal policy reforms is going to amount to anything, it has to be the issue of insecurity in the country. It's become extremely troubling. It's a very bad situation. The numbers are not looking good in the last 17 months of the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. So whatever they need to do really to stem the tide, to ensure that Nigerians are safer, should be encouraged and appreciated. The only concern is that, look, we are still borrowing. We keep borrowing. Nigerians are wondering that, look, after subsidy removal, after floating of the currency, we've been told several times that we've now been saving a lot of money. We now have a lot of money in our kitty to take care of some of our needs, in security, infrastructure. So we're now going to see some level of reduction in these loans that we keep, going to different parts of the world to get. But again, we'll have to wait really. But because this one concerns security really, it's a bit difficult for me to say, oh, the government should not continue to borrow for things like this. Borrowing is not really a problem if the monies are judiciously used, I must say. But again, it's just very important that we also raise these concerns about problems with borrowings and lending, and debt issues requires that we also have to talk about some of these things. And on the issue of harmonization of taxes, whatever we need to do also to put our tax system into proper shape is also a welcome development. But again, when it comes to policy announcements and implementation, there are still a lot of questions about our commitment to some of these things. So we just have to wait again to see how it goes.
Page 43 of the Punch is where you find this information. On page 36, we have here, diaspora Nigerians get non-resident BVN platform by December, says Cardoso. The Nigeria Interbank Settlement System will introduce a non-resident bank verification number platform by December, aimed at enabling Nigerians living abroad to manage their local bank account, conduct business, and meet Know Your Customer requirements remotely. The Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Yemi Cardoso announced the initiative during a meeting with members of the Nigerian community at the sidelines of the World Bank and IMF session in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. Now, Cardoso stated that the initiative aims to ensure that Nigerians, regardless of their location, can engage seamlessly with the Nigerian economy and expand their business opportunities. There's always been conversations about allowing Nigerians in the diaspora to participate in the financial market here in the country, maybe even in the leadership selection process. I remember there were conversations around whether or not to allow Nigerians in the diaspora to vote. Yes, that's still a conversation that is ongoing. But as it stands, Yemi Cardoso is trying to put in place an initiative that allows Nigerians outside the country to still be able to operate their accounts here in Nigeria and meet all the Know Your Customer requirement, amongst other things.
A good one, really. With technology, the world has become a global village, even something smaller than a village, really. because again, technology has been able to bridge all the gaps when it comes to things like this. So a good one, technology makes some of these things so easy. So I think it's good, but going into what you said about diaspora voting and what have you, we also talked about the need to look at electoral reforms,
Right.
And how we can, bring in technology when it comes to electoral process. Because with technology, you reduce human elements that allows for all manner of corruption and shenanigans with the electoral process and processes. So look at the US, for example. The D-Day itself is the 5th of November, right?
Right.
But elections have started. Voting have started.
Yeah.
Mail voting has started in some states. People are early voting have started in some states. And that's supposed to be what technology can help you to do with the electoral system, if you understand what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But we are still struggling with the relevance of even the IREV. The courts have told us that IREV is just a very important. It has no legal relevance in our electoral system. That at the end of the day, it is what is collated manually. That still has to be a document that will be presented in court, to prove a case of election rigging or not. So at the end of the day, yes, we've brought in beavers, we've brought in IREV and all of those things. But I think we need to do more with technology so that we can have a more transparent electoral system.
Page 36, you find that information. Let's talk about Ogun State. Now, on your dam, Ogun communities reject Abiodun's relocation advisories on page 4. We have here that the Ogun State government on Wednesday urged residents of flooded areas and communities across the state to relocate immediately, just as they had been advised about 4 months ago. And this is as the residents expressed their displeasure at the advisory, while calling on the government to prefer a solution to the problem. Some of the affected communities from the recent release of water from the Oyo Dam include Isheri, Riverview Estate, Oshorun Estate, Opik Estate, Arekpo, Akute, Alagbole, among others. The government had urged the residents in these areas to heed its earlier flood alert advisory to relocate or elevate their homes during this time of year. And the Commissioner for Environment, Ola Olasomi, stated this on Wednesday in response to the flooding situation in the area. So far, we have the residents of these Ogun communities that have been affected refusing to relocate. They said rather than force us to relocate, or is this going to be the continued action every time it rains? Why not solve the problem of finding a way to accept the water or divert the water, rather than every year when we have this flooding incidents, you tell us to leave our homes or to elevate our homes. And I don't think the structure or our architecture here allows for the kind of elevation that would be able to save you from a flooding incident in comparison to other Western countries. Fuad.
Well, I don't know about these communities refusing to relocate. The question is, has the government provided a relocation
temporary shelters,
a camp for them, and all of that? Because it's not just to say relocate. What is the government doing to ensure that at the point of relocation, number one, their properties are safe? Because again, sometimes when you are relocating, it means that some of the communities will be deserted for that period because of the dangers of water, and then of course, with insecurity, two things can happen. Then where are they supposed to relocate to? Have you created camps for them? And all of those kinds of things. So it would have been nice to hear from the government if those kinds of things have been done. And then for people who are saying, instead of every time the rain falls in this time of the year, you tell us to relocate, why don't you look for a permanent solution? Well, this is a temporary solution if the government had put in place some places where they can move to. Because at the end of the day, we can't be talking about a permanent solution when there's an immediate problem. The problem now is that, look, the water level is rising, and as it becomes life-threatening, it could actually kill people if they don't move away from those places. So I think we have to encourage people to first look at their own safety before calling the government out on a more permanent solution. But I think that there have been conversations continuously and consistently on what the government needs to do with the Ogun River, the Oyo Dam, and all of that. There are people who have said that, look, can we further dredge the Ogun River so that it has the capacity to collect more water than allow it to overflow into the community? There are people who have also said that, look, we need to look at the integrity of that dam. We need to build another dam, So, but again, for now, I think we should be looking for an immediate solution to this threat to the lives of the people with this rising water level, while we now start to talk about a more permanent solution going forward.
Right, I agree with you. I think safety first before you start to speak about the inadequacies of government. Lady jailed 11 years for importing 35.20 kilogram of cannabis. It's on page 4 and 5 as well.
That's big now.
Oh my God. 5, please. I'm trying to...
From Canada, where?
5. It's on page 4 and 5. We have other headlines here. 5, please. I'm trying to maintain professionalism. On page 43, we have Makinde rally support for Ajayi. Says election will shock APC. Okay. Yes. Is it to shock APC? It's on page 43 if you'd like to read that. Ayedatiwa woos voters, declares PDP umbrella finally torn. Is on page 43. Well, it's just individuals throwing jabs at parties. It's an expected.
If the PDP umbrella is torn, what was left of their own bro?
Even do.
I'm just saying now.
Even do. It still trends in the papers. All right, we're about to segue now to the Vanguard newspaper. Let's look at this headline here that tells us reps more increase in derivation fund from 13% to 50%. Now, the House of Representatives is considering a constitutional amendment bill aimed at increasing the derivation fund from the current not less than 13% to not less than 50% to ensure the development of all Nigerian states and regions where mineral resources are being extracted. The bill is sponsored by Awaji Inombek Abiante and 8 other members and is being slated for debate. The decision was arrived at by the Speaker, Mr. Tajuddin Abbas, after a session of the House pleaded to be given copies of the bill to study when the matter came up during plenary for second reading next week in Abuja. So the bill basically forward would alter the section of the Constitution 162 subsection 2 of the Constitution by deleting the words not less than 13% and inserting not less than 50%. Forward, as you know, most states where extraction happens or oil exploration for one, they get to enjoy a 13% derivation fund benefit. So now we have the House of Reps saying that 13% might not really cut it at this time. It should be not less than 50%, considering some of the damages that this oil exploration or mineral extraction causes to the communities in question. What do you think about this proposed increase of the derivation fund?
It's a welcome development. In fact, it has to have been the other way around, because in proper federal system of government, the federating units are supposed to control their resources and then contribute to the central purse, not the central controlling the resources and just giving a percentage to the federating unit. If you understand what I'm saying,
right?
Because again, normally we are still on this conversation around resource control. Currently, it is 13%, derivation from areas where these resources are mined or explored. But they are not talking about 50%. I think that the end game should be everyone controlling his own resources and then contributing to the central purse, percentage to the central purse. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
But, that is not the most important thing again in the conversation. The most important thing in the conversation is that, look, even if these states control their resources, who are the people that will manage these resources on behalf of this state? Look at the Niger Delta region, for example, say, because of the issue of underdevelopment, a development commission was set up for that region. Right?
Right.
13%. For most of the states. In fact, if you look at the fact allocation, the Niger Delta states see what they get. Huge sums every month goes into those states. Because of the cry for development in that region, a ministry was also set up. The Ministry of Niger Delta was also set up for that region. We are not saying it's enough, really. And like I said, my position is that, look, let people control their resources and then contribute to the central purse. That's supposed to be the right thing, and that's my position. But let us even look at the arrangement that we've done so far and see how well it has worked to better the lives of the people. Can you say that with everything that has been done for the Niger Delta, the political gladiators and leaders of that region have done enough to improve the living standards of the people, using the resources so far? It is hard for them to do that. And that's why, for me, until we have a proper electoral process where the best of minds where the person was, without knowing any godfather, without having a deep pocket as to being able to buy votes and all the shenanigans that currently happen with our politics. Until we have a system where Mr. Nobody, who knows nobody, can aspire to become something and become it not because there's one godfather in place or because he has a way to manipulate the process. Until those fine stellar minds are able to get into leadership position in Nigeria state, nothing is going to change, even if people are allowed to control their resources. So at the end of the day, I'm not, yeah, we can take it to 50%, but it's just going to be more money for the corrupt system that the electoral system has created at both the national and the subnational level. Nothing is going to change.
It's on page 12 of the Vanguard newspaper. We have on page 10, climate change. Lagos is sinking. Deputy Governor Hamzat raises alarm. He says that the Deputy Governor of Lagos State, Dr. Obafemi Hamzat, yesterday raised the alarm that just like New York City in the United States of America, Lagos State is gradually sinking due to climate change, and he's urging everyone to take action to prevent impending natural disasters. And he cited examples in certain cities and noted that with a shoreline of 180 kilometers, Lagos is surrounded by water. Fouad, we're being told that Lagos is sinking.
Well, it's just again the topography of Lagos.
Yeah.
Naturally, Lagos is surrounded by water. You have the lagoon, you have the Atlantic Ocean, and there have been concerns. You know, we can't forget easily how Victoria Island was almost going to be swept into the Atlantic Ocean until the Atlantic City was created. So, for environmental experts, there's a lot of work that has to be done really to save the city or the state of Lagos State. I agree with the deputy governor that we need to pay more attention to our environment. The climate change conversation has to be taken seriously. The rising water levels around the different water bodies surrounding Lagos should be a source of concern, because if you go into some communities, especially if you go into our coastlines, you know, you go into some areas where the beach used to be very, very far. You now see that the beach is getting closer and closer to us, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
There are also concerns too about dredging activities around different parts of Lagos. You know, because as it is, we are still reclaiming land. There's a lot of construction going on under different water bodies. The environmental impact analysis has a lot of questions. You know, remember when the Lagos Calabar Coastal Highway was to be built, and a simple question was thrown to the minister about the EIA, and then he said he doesn't understand English. That he doesn't understand grammar. So I think we have to be more responsible with our environment in Lagos, particularly when it comes to the threat of water and the fact that, look, we are below the sea level, whether we like it or not. It's not really a state that is on higher grounds like that, you know.
Right.
So, but again, it's a conversation I will continue to have. You know, the beauty of Lagos is the fact that, look, we are surrounded by water. So, while the threat of climate change is evident and we have to take it seriously, we also have to look at how we can also turn around the threat to become a strength somewhat when it comes to the economy of Lagos.
It's on page 10 of the Vanguard newspaper. So let's spend the 1 minute we have left to just glance through the rest of the headlines we have here. Page 20 tells us IMF wants Nigeria to focus more on increasing tax revenue. It's on page 20.
That was to kill us.
Deep sigh. Obasanjo Danjuma decried dwindling quality of leadership in Nigeria. It's on page 8. And we have...
Danjuma.
Yes, they're decrying the dwindling quality of leadership in the country. We also have
what quality of leadership did they give?
Maybe just ignore the messenger and just focus on the message, right? I mean, there is dwindling quality of leadership, isn't there?
It started when? When did it start to dwindle?
What? This story is on page 8. We have here on page 6, my breast is hurting, says Bobrisky. Okay. It's on page 6. Yeah.
What is hurting?
The report says, my breast hurting, Bobrisky.
Does he have breast?
Emphasis on the report says. That's what it's there. It's on page 6 of the Vanguard newspaper. Yes. And page 9 tells us, Fuad, please, I just got to beg you. Page 9 says, federal government gives Julius Berger 7-day ultimatum over Abuja Kaduna road project. It's about time because, I mean, come on. Let's see what they can do in the 7 days anyways. And we have on page 12, Edo APC transition committee raising false alarm over document, says government. Okay, mixed reaction as federal government scraps Niger Delta ministry is on page 26. And finally, on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, we have cautious optimism over Tinubu's reshuffled cabinet and changes. Flood displaces 5 million Nigerians in 10 years is on page 8. Allow PDP breathe, Ologbondiyan tells Atiku and Wike is on page 3. Diphtheria killed 1,191 persons in 17 months, says NCDC. And finally, MBS says 85.2% of households use estimated billing is on page 3. And finally, federal government receives 350,000 application, disburses 10 billion naira in student loan. Is a report here on the front page of the Guardian on page 2.
The was supposed to be for 1.2 million students, right?
Right. So, I mean,
so why people not applying?
Well, I guess the trust deficit is once again rearing its head. That's what we have for you today on Trends in the Papers. We'll go for a break. When we come back, it'll be open mic. Of course, open mic Thursday for Mainland Focus. You get to choose the story that you would like to speak on. My name is Sage Babalola. Fouad will be with us as well. Don't go anywhere. After the break, the conversation will continue.